Salutations. Wanted to go into something in detail here, and it's interesting because without going into great detail, the last week I had few days I started having a couple experiences, and always when that happens, and that doesn't always happen to me, but these ones were pretty good, and there were a lot of information came in during. And part of it would be concerning why I have such a fascination with time science and time control technology. And part of that goes into the fact that one is I've had a couple experiences what I believe to be time travelers. One would be these gentlemen here, there's a situation here, this craft here that I saw when I was a kid. I went over this before, that this had windows on it from the outside, which is interesting, and on the inside was these cats, and there were I could see like down below, my mother and myself. So this was some type of, I believe, like recording station, not quite like the chronovisor that we've heard about, but something similar that is being used by historians on board this craft. And now with the experience I just had, I know that each one of these compartments like this one on board this craft, you see the different compartments, did not contain all, definitely not Nordics. Some were contained non-physical, non-humans. So that's a whole other thing going on there. How many different of these alliance people you have working together in one of these craft. So they're definitely not all Nordics. You've got all sorts of different types, including those that are definitely non-corporeal. So I think there's a whole lot of things that are being observed about our coexisting timelines. Now with this information and other things that start happening later on afterwards is I have to pay attention to things when they come in threes, all right? So I got guided to this this lady's website. And then I started checking out all of her stuff, and it happened three ways. First, I got guided to it, and I kind of tried to dismiss it. Then her name came up in some stuff I was looking at in another way, and then a friend sends me a message. Have you ever heard of this lady? And so it came in threes, so I had to pay attention to it. All right. And when I first started looking at what she's saying and listening to her, she makes the claim, "Oh, I'm the world's a leading authority on time shifts and time anomalies, yada yada." And honestly, that's a bold claim, all right? And a bit arrogant, I thought. So because I've done a lot of research, which would be like people I've checked into, like Kurt Godel, Frank Tipler, even Anderson, Dr. Wong in Japan, and there's a whole lot of going on in the private sector to where that's a very bold claim. But when I looked into her research, I was very intrigued, and I'll give her much props. She said people don't give her a lot of props and acknowledge her work a lot. Her name is Starfire Tor, and I'll put some pictures of her up, and you can look that up. It's kind of a unique name, so you can find her fairly easy. But she's done extensive research, and what's very cool is she goes into the science of it. She likes science. That's where I'm coming from at this. And some things she nailed automatically are things that I've talked about for a long time, which would be one, the SOHO website, but also the solar activity, how the solar activity causes geometric storms here on Earth that interferes with the inertial frame drag of Earth, which contains closed time-like curves. So this where actually there can be a lot of editing and changing of our timeline, and how there can be multiple timelines. And something I like about this woman too is that she gives out these, this lady, is she gives out these different terms that are terms I've heard in science fiction, but not put together in the way she's putting together in some ways with her research, which is cool. She came up with the word time shifts, and she talked about extensively how the Mandela effect was stolen from her work. The lady, can't remember the lady's name, but I'll put a picture up of the book. How that lady actually stole from her work, and that the Mandela effect was somewhat of a scam, and how she wants them to be called time shifts, and she calls these time shifts coming from core matrix. All right, and this is where things start getting really interesting, because she starts talking about black holes and the ergosphere of the black hole, and how there's remnants of the universe there and things from the collapse of the universe at the beginning of our galaxy. The black hole sits in the middle, and that's very advanced knowledge. Now, personally, I think she's a little off when I take this a step further, because I've talked a lot to Dr. Rudy Shields, and he's probably right now the leading authority on black hole research in terms of the data he's went over from the observatories. But if you look at what he talks about, which is the MACO, the magnetic eternally collapsing object, which is actually sits inside the MACO, inside the black hole itself, and it stops the black hole from being infinite. So everything always going into it. The MACO actually positronium is what stops the black hole from being infinite, and for everything going into it. And so in that way, she's right, there is a debris out there, the ergosphere, but you also have a mechanism inside the black hole, this MACO, that actually has the mechanism that creates this quantum hologram outside of everything that goes into it. So you've got the quantum hologram, and you've got the memory that's contained in the MACO. Now, interestingly enough, as described, this actually becomes to where the universe itself is wrapping around what she's calling the ergosphere is wrapping around it. That's what we would call the akashic records. And it's going to be, since the beginning, these things the formation, these black holes, since the beginning are going to contain this information. So that's fascinating, so she's very close to that, and she's gone into the SOHO, which I've talked about, the SOHO satellite, which I've been talking about since I first came out. You can go to this SOHO website yourself and look at the sun. They take pictures, I believe it's every 12 minutes, on different colors, nanospectrums. Now you can observe these, and many people have seen craft, some of them diverting solar flares towards Earth. And you can see different types of craft around the sun, going in, going out of it, implying that the dark spots of it are actually some type of wormholes. So anyway, that's neither here nor there. I won't go too far into that, but I'll put pictures up of that, and these are things you can look up for yourself. And she's very aware of this. I've been talking about this for a long time, so she's aware of the science behind what causes these time anomalies. Now, she goes into something called the prime, the core matrix that she believes is coming from the central of the black hole of our universe itself, and how it's actually doing re-edits on the timelines. And one of the terms she come up with that I like is coexisting timelines. That is much more accurate than only separated by frequencies. Okay, just like a radio station type of thing. So the term coexisting timelines came from her, and like I just said, that's much more accurate. And going forward with this, several of the terms, another term she threw out is time shift living dead, which are people that have like this deal that is a time edit that we can see that were like reported as being dead, or we have a memory of them being dead when they're not, which are give things which she's calling time markers. I like that term, which are edits in the timelines when they start shifting together or having almost pasting and copying and pasting of the timelines, how some of us can detect it. We recognize these markers. And some of these markers she gave were very, very, very fascinating. All right, so some were for this this time shift living dead. Some examples she gave out were not just Mandela, but she gave out Abe Pagoda. That's one. I think that's interesting because I do remember hearing about him dying not long after Barney Miller, and then after Barney Miller went off the air, and then suddenly years later I found out she's still alive. But I heard for a long time he was dead. I do recall that. And certain people that will come up that are reported dead that aren't. Another one I remember vividly was the singer from Journey, that rock group's Journey, Steve Perry. You used to hear that songs all the time in the 80s, and I heard he had throat cancer and died. I remember reading that several times, and maybe even hearing it on MTV or something. But now all of a sudden that's not so. That man still lives now. So there's a couple people that come up that are these time shift living dead. Fascinating concept. Another one, when she starts going into the type of research she's doing to back up the solar flares and the solar activities she's monitoring from the SOHO, brilliant, all right, and correlating this with these time edits. She believes that's coming through the core matrix is using the sun itself to produce these time edits. Now, another one that was really good, I thought she brought up, was 9/11 and Hurricane Aaron. And I remember hearing about Hurricane, but then it just suddenly seemed I forgot about it. But that happened right at 9/11. In fact, Hurricane Aaron was about peaking out on 9/11. I think it's 9/9 to 9/15. You can look this up. And it was peaking, and it was somewhere right around 500 miles off the coast of New York. I mean, that's pretty close. And the day before was completely stormy. I think the first few days before 9/11 were stormy. If there would have been the rain from the hurricane happened on 9/11, that would have seriously affected air traffic over New York. So it's just things like that are very interesting, but how that just kind of like, we heard all about Hurricane Aaron until 9/11, and all of a sudden we didn't hear about it anymore that day on. Not just that it got kind of just forgotten about, but it just wasn't a factor anymore. And it's interesting, I have a couple of friends with the same name that travel a lot, and they're just aware of a lot of things, of current events, and even they can't remember Hurricane Aaron. And it's a very interesting example of a time edit from this core matrix she's talking about. Now, I come from the kind of the knowledge of the private sector and how some of the things which would be, she makes comments that the core matrix can't be affected, and I probably agree with that. So the timelines overall, but I think when you get into the timelines within Earth and within the inertial drag frame, that's different. I think they can be affected by special relativity, which requires lower power than general relativity when dealing with time science. So anyway, that's just a couple of things I want to bring up there that I thought are very interesting. But I'll tell you, that lady's on it. I give her much credit. I think she's quite well briefed, and she's presented some brilliant concepts, and her research is in depth. And something else, she says she's an experiencer too, a contactee. I believe it because I haven't discovered her information after contacts I'd had myself. So there's something going on there, and I think that's cool. Anyway, I'm going to look over this real quick because we got a few things going on. Yes, okay, this is important. she talks about you have these major time edits, and then also a time reboot, she calls it, which is where the Earth is completely destroyed and has to be rebooted. Everything is stopped and rebooted by this core matrix. Now, she says this happened in the past. The Earth was destroyed in a galactic type of war with several species, and we had to be rebooted. So everything we're dealing with now is within a time edit itself. Now, I will tell you, I do not think that's all BS. And this is based on something I've said before, is that when I've tried to engage the beings I interact with, what's going to happen in the future, since a childhood, they never have told me. They've never been able to they've never given me a future revelation, but but they have showed me the past and how that will not happen again. And what I was shown was something that looked like almost ashes going around our sun. Something really bad happened here, okay, on Earth. And so I think that's probably been maybe, if not millions, billions of years ago, I don't know, further back than what we're told, and further back than the thousands of years we think. So I think this time edit may go back, way further back. But it kind of supports what she's saying, what they've shown me from the past. So, you know, it changes things. It's a startling deal, and I think her research is good. So I would just recommend looking into what she's saying right along with the other time science research you're doing and time control technology you're researching. I believe definitely that they are able to affect through the private sector timelines here on Earth to a certain degree, and certain do things that, as she would call them, edits and kind of pasting things over that will change things. I think it's easier to access those frequencies than we think, but it just can't be done galactically, galaxy-wise. But I think within the Earth frame, the drag of Earth, the inertial drag frame of Earth, that's possible. Something else concerning the Makos too, and the black holes, the ergosphere she's talking about too, as well as I do believe that that is where there's actually, it's emitting a lot of inertial frame, drag frame itself, as explained to Dr. Shields had mentioned it to me, that they're actually even greater as far as manipulating gravitationally inertial drag frames. You're going to have even more time, and how time actually is going around like the ergosphere is circling. But that's how the universe itself is. It's a copy. It's like that quantum hologram is wrapping that all around. So when you access a black hole, actually, which operates on brain waves, it's the same as brain waves, conscious waves, quantum conscious waves, all right, is the way we access, that's the way you actually access one of these, is through the same way of brain waves. So that's changing things quite a bit, you know, but in that way, the information, the quantum hologram of the universe that's wrapping around constantly, like an onion, the layers of an onion. When you access this through the brain waves, that is the akashic records, the record of all space and time. So the black holes are like the hard drives of the universe. Look at it that way. That's what the data is showing. So she's very close to being almost dead on that. You know, with Dr. Shields, I think has a little more information, has expanded that a little more than just the ergosphere. It's a little more detailed than that when getting the inside of the Mako itself. But that's neither here nor there, just as far as that lady's on it. I want to commend her. She says people don't give her credit. I'll give her credit. I think you're doing a real great job. And anyway, please subscribe. Please stay tuned. I'm trying to stay on top of things here. Thank you for subscribing, those that do, for the kind words and everything. Thank you for the people on Patreon. That's why these videos are still being made. Or otherwise, it just would have been over quite some time ago. So please hit the notification bell also and share so that way you get notified when I put out new videos. Sorry, I just actually had to make some notes on this one to make sure I got everything to you there. The geometric storms, the CLCs. Yeah, I think we've got it all, definitely. So that's something to just take information on and take note of, and check her out. I'll put a link in the comments to her website so that way people can check it out. And like I said, this is just so you can do your own research and expand your own knowledge concerning time technology. I've done several videos over it. This will go with that. So take it and enjoy. Peace.